Right, today's project is curtains. This is only one curtain. I don't know how long they are, I don't know how wide they are, I don't know whether there's trim on both edges or just one. All I know is I need to keep one edge with trim on it. I have to put pleats in it and loops because it's going to be put on medallions. So let's get on with it. This is going to be a project and a half today. They've got a trim on the front and they want to keep that. And so the first pleat is going to go on here at the beginning, and I'm allowing 12 inches for the pleat. Now, the gentleman had originally told me that there were 5 medallions, and when I checked yesterday, he informed me that there were only going to be 4. We've decided to put 11 inches in between so that when they're hung up they will scoop down a little bit. There's my 11, 1 pleat and 1 scoop. Put my 12 inches for my next pleat, and I'm just going to put 1 across so that I remember. Just make sure that when you're doing these things, it's very easy, especially when you've got similar sizes, to forget where you are. So that's my second set of pleats, second scoop at 11, my third pleat here going across like that, my third scoop at 11, and my fourth, which I'm going to mark here like that. And because it's an outside pleat, I'm not going to mark it. I need to be able to cut all the way down, so I'm going to add another 2 inches. That's my cut line. Remember to always double check your measurements. So I'm just going to quickly run through, make sure everything's where I need it to be. 12 and then the 2. Okay, the one I cut off yesterday was 18.5 from the seam to where I had to cut off, and this one is 16, and then the underside was different as well. This is hardly anything. Always double check your measurements. I'm going to remove this pin. 16 is here, so I'm going to hold that there and cut there and on into here. I'm not going to go very far down, I just want that to be done. I think these curtains are at least 20 foot long, so they are not easy for me to do. Now, just cutting the top layer, I'm going to cut that down to the 16 point like that. Don't cut both sides. You will have a horrible mess on your hands if you cut both sides. Try to make sure that that side is always straight, and it doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, it kind of does have to be perfect, but anything that's a bit weird I can do later. Turn this over. There's the seam here, and I need to work out how far that is. It's 1 inch. I'm going to just cut down. Yesterday when I did the other side, it was 4.5 inches. As I say, just always double check absolutely everything before you start cutting. I'll use this will be a bit easier. But I'm still going to measure it. It's only 3/4 of an inch, that's even worse. And again, lift the fabric away from the fabric underneath so you can cut. Otherwise you're going to end up with all sorts of strange things going on. This is going to be a little bit of a slow process because my table's not big enough. I have to rest either side of the fabric on a pair of chairs either side of my table. Pull that back. Now, in order to keep everything together, I'm going to just pin that there. And I'll move down a little bit further and put another pin here. Once you get so far, you don't actually have to have it upside down anymore. Pull everything out. These are so big, I'm actually unraveling them as I go, so it takes a little bit more effort. I'll just carry on working my way down. This is why you do them separately. As you can see, as I'm going down, the lining of the curtain is going this way and the top is going that way. So if I had decided, oh, that's where it needs to be, you can imagine there wouldn't be any lining underneath whatsoever. Just because something should be doesn't mean to say it is. These aren't mine, but if I had made these, I would have interlocked the seams so that I would know if I was cutting them down to cut them a little bit wider, and I would know that my seam here would be interlocked with the seam here, because I would have made sure that the seams were on top of each other. But they weren't done that way. I always work from the top to the bottom. The reason is the lining might have shrunk while it was being cleaned a few times. Cut back this a little bit. Actually, you know what? This is really quite bulky. I'm going to unstitch here and take that seam out. And I'll probably take it out all the way down because it doesn't really have to be in there. I just cut it so it's nice and even, and also to show you that that's what you really need to do. Started pulling the lining out here, which takes it to there, and I'm going to just fold that over. It's a lot less bulk in there, which is how I want it to be. I'll fold that down, line that up. It doesn't have to, well, I say it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't really have to be perfect because all I'm going to do is stitch down here and overstitch just to hold it into position so it doesn't move. It's easier than when I'll put the pleat in if it's already in place. I'll continue down this little length. Homeward bounders, as my mum calls them, would be fine. And if they go all the way through to the other side, it won't matter because it's inside the pleat. Actually, yes, it will matter because it's on the outside of the pleat. So don't do that. It's just to hold everything in position. Nothing pretty. This has to be folded over about 2 inches, and that needs to be folded inside. And as I come down, it will adjust to probably being about there. So if I keep adjusting that as I go down, I'll bring that in. I'll pin that into place for now, like that. Now what I've done is I've cut some of the underside back so I can actually pull that into shape, and I am going to go in here and out, across inside here for about 1/2 inch, and then all the way through to the back. It's a tiny stitch, then into the folded edge about 1/2 inch. I'm trying to roll that into position as I go. Small stitch all the way to the front, long stitch all the way into the side, and a small stitch into the front. On here all you'll see is that there's nothing to see, and that's how I'm going to do it all the way down. I could, if I wanted to, iron everything into position and do it like that, but this fabric doesn't really iron very well, so I'm not going to waste my time. The other thing is, as I go down the side here, I'm adjusting it, whereas I could use the sewing machine, but then I'm going to have a long row of stitches where I don't want them. So for this application, this is the way I'm going to do it. Once the top can hang over the side of the table, I will be able to have a bit of weight there, and I won't have to lean so much on the curtain as I'm sewing it. If the stitch was going to show on the front, I'd still use this, but I would only pick up 2 or 3 threads on the front, but I would weave it up and down so I wouldn't leave too much of a sign on the front that I had sewn it. If you've done it too tight, just go from the bottom and move it up. They'll be fine. I'm pleased with that. Now I'm going to work my way all the way to the bottom. Not only did I cut this back, but I ended up wrapping it edge to edge and into place. This is why you start at the top of a curtain and work down if it's pre-made, because this pin has to come out and that can go all the way down there. It makes a big difference. If I'd started at the bottom with it pinned into place and then gone to the top, I would have had a few inches of fabric I needed to work out how to get into place. I was fighting this by trying to make it go where I wanted it to go, so in the end I just put the 2 sides together like that and then rolled it into place. Then I can do the same with this one, just roll it in. As I sew down, I'll reconfigure it until I get to the bottom, but that should go in quite nicely. I have my length of fabric here. I'm going to fold it into 3, so I'm going to fold it under there about 1 inch and then over the top. It should be just shy because this is 2 3/4 inches, and I'm going to pop that under there. I'm going to do it on, I think, 5. Shorten the thing, and how wide. Dialed the size I need. Keep that nice and tight in there. You just want it to look even. It really doesn't have to look perfect because it's going to be high up and out of sight. Make sure that the ziggy-zag part goes over the edge. Just hold it because I want it flat. I don't want it to be lumpy in any way, shape or form. I'm going to do that the whole length of this piece. Now I need to cut these up. I've been told that the diameter of these is 10 centimetres, so if I put my finger there, it's just under 4 inches. Fold it over twice, which makes it 8. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it
8¼ that should get it round the sides, because I don't know how deep they are. And then I want 1/2 inch in the seam. So I'm actually going to make them 9½ inches long. Don't cut them off each other. Measure each of these separately, because if you make one wrong, then the others will all be wrong. I need 8. They've got 4 on each side. I'm not stretching it, I'm just pulling it out and then letting it spring back, because if I stretch them, you're going to have them all different sizes, but I've found if you do it that way, it's usually quite even. Now for the pleats. There's my first pleat. It's going right to the end. Pull that out to the center here, and I'm going to fold that in. It should be round about 2 inches on either fold. Kind of straighten them out. Unfortunately, these have been used, so they're a little bit wrinkly and crinkly, but I think that looks about even. I'm going to come up behind here with my double thread, and I'm going to put a few stitches in. I'm not going all the way to the front. I always like to have that a little bit open. Pull that through, make sure it's nice and even. Twist that up and just go in and out of here a couple of times. I'm not going to go very far back actually, maybe 1/2 inch, but I like to make sure that the front is absolutely secure so that I can then measure off for the ties. Maybe another couple of stitches, nice and tight. At least I'm not trying to go through crinoline as well. These are nice soft tops. I'm going to feed my needle back behind here, so I've got a nice start for the next section. I'm going to set that back just a little way like that. Measure down to make sure the bottom is 1/2 inch from the top, and then taking my needle, I'm going to come across like that, and I'm going to overstitch along here towards the back, not all the way through, just through one side of this pleat like this, so that the weight of the curtain is actually held not just at the top, but also a little bit further down in the pleat of the curtain. And then I'm going to go back along to where I started. I'm going to take my needle, I'm going to push it through 2 sets of pleats like this to the other side. This is the underside, put that to the back as well, so it makes a nice loop. Measure that to make sure that that's no more than 1/2 inch down. I'm going to overstitch to the back and then again to the front to secure that in place. These are really heavy curtains. I don't want them just dropping down when they're hanging. They don't have to be pretty. Nobody's ever going to see them. I'm going to close the front side of the pleat like that over there. I'm going to go all the way through to that front side like that. Close the back side of the pleat so everything's inside, and I'm just going to feed the needle all the way through, backwards and forwards. So I'll go towards the back of here and then back towards the front and then back towards the back, so that I know this is absolutely secured in. My thread is doubled over, by the way, and even when I get to the back, I'm not going to go over like that. I'm just going to go through the back and leave that open slightly. I'm not sure how long the post is on these medallions. It was really difficult to see. They gave you an overall idea of how deep they were from the back of the medallion to the front, but they didn't give you an idea of how big the actual post of the medallion was. Behind the tab and then come back towards the front. They're not nice neat little stitches. They're lost in the top, so it doesn't really matter, but I just like to finish off things by hand. I think it looks more professional. So now I'm going to go back towards the back and then do the next loops exactly the same way. I'll secure it in a second to make sure that none of those stitches are going anywhere. Thread it through the top here a couple of times and then that should be finished. There we go. Here again I've got the 2 marker pins like that. Pull it forward. That's my center pleat. Once it's in line, I'll over sew the front and then I'll put my tab either side of those 2 and then secure it just like I did before. I just find it easier if I've secured the front. It shouldn't take me too long to get 3 more of these in. This is actually a really nice upcycle. It was originally curtains that went on a pole, and although I've removed half of the curtains lengthways, I think these are going to work quite nicely. I now have a set of curtains with the trim on the front and suitable loops, so I think the gentleman and his wife will be pleased with this. If you want to see more from me, please subscribe, hit the bell button, and a few thumbs up would be absolutely brilliant. And in the meantime, see you later. Take care. Ciao.